a routine traffic stop, a wrongful arrest, and one massive mistake that turns an entire city upside down. Officer Jake Turner thought he was just doing his job when he pulled over a woman who fit the description. But in a twist he never saw coming, the woman in handcuffs wasn't a suspect. She was Vanessa Brooks, the chief prosecutor. And she wasn't about to let this slide. What started as a simple arrest quickly spirals into a dangerous game of corruption, cover-ups, and a fight for the truth. Because Jake wasn't acting alone. Someone powerful was pulling the strings, and now Vanessa is in their way. How far will the system go to silence her? And can she expose the truth before it's too late? Hit subscribe so you don't miss out on stories like this. And let us know where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. Jake Turner stood by his patrol car, gripping his radio tightly. The city lights reflected off his uniform as he watched the woman inside the vehicle. Her hands were cuffed, but she sat with an unsettling calmness, her gaze sharp and calculating. This was supposed to be a routine arrest. So why did he feel like the one being hunted? His partner, Officer Davis, shifted uncomfortably beside him. "Jake, are you sure about this?" Jake exhaled sharply. "She matches the description." Davis hesitated. "She doesn't have the tattoo, though." Jake ignored him and turned back to Vanessa. He opened the car door and pulled her out, holding her by the arm. She didn't resist, didn't even flinch. Instead, she looked at him and said, "Are you really this stupid, or do you just enjoy ruining your career?" Jake scoffed. "You're under arrest." "For what exactly?" Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have an answer. The dispatch had been vague, but the description had fit, or so he had convinced himself. A small crowd had started gathering, their phones raised, recording every second. A man in a hoodie stepped forward. "Hey, officer, what's the charge?" Jake tightened his grip on Vanessa. "Step back, sir." The man smirked. "You don't even know why you're arresting her, do you?" Before Jake could respond, another car pulled up, not just any car. The chief of police had arrived. Chief Miller, a seasoned officer with graying hair and tired eyes, stepped out. The moment he saw Vanessa, his expression twisted in horror. "Turner," he said slowly, "tell me you didn't just put cuffs on Vanessa Brooks." Jake frowned. "Sir, she? You're absolute idiot," Miller muttered under his breath. Then he turned to Vanessa, pulling out his keys and unlocking her handcuffs. Jake was stunned. "Wait, what?" Miller gave him a look that could kill. "You just arrested the chief prosecutor of this city. Do you even know what that means?" Jake's stomach dropped. Vanessa stretched her wrists, giving him a smirk. "It means I could have your badge before sunrise." Jake turned to Davis, looking for backup, but his partner just shook his head. And then Vanessa's phone buzzed. She answered it, her voice smooth and controlled. "Yes, Mayor? I am fine. No, I won't press charges yet." Jake's blood ran cold. The crowd was still filming. The news was spreading. And in that moment, Jake knew he had just made the worst mistake of his life. The flashing red and blue lights reflected in Vanessa Brooks' sharp eyes as she pocketed her phone. Jake Turner stood frozen, his grip tightening around the now useless handcuffs in his hands. Around them, murmurs of the growing crowd mixed with the occasional snap of a camera shutter. Chief Miller turned to his officers. "Someone tell me why she was arrested." His voice was sharp, his patience razor-thin. Jake swallowed hard. "She matched the description, black female, black suit. Did she have the tattoo?" Miller snapped. Jake hesitated. Davis answered first. "No, sir. I told him that." Miller exhaled sharply. Then, why, he stopped himself and turned to Vanessa. His voice softened. "D.A. Brooks, I apologize for this." Vanessa held up a hand. "Save it. I'm not the one you should be worried about." Miller frowned. "What do you mean?" Vanessa didn't answer. Instead, she gestured toward the crowd. Dozens of phones were pointed at them. And at the center of it all was a man in a hoodie, still recording. He grinned. Too late, officer. This is already live. Jake's stomach clenched. Live? He spun toward the camera. Turn that off. The man laughed. Sorry, that's not how this works. The whole city is watching right now. Vanessa smirked. That's right. And they're about to see the fallout. Jake turned to Miller. Sir, Miller didn't even look at him. Instead, he pulled out his phone, tapping furiously. His brows furrowed. Then his face paled. Oh, God. The video was everywhere. News stations were already picking it up. Twitter was exploding. Hashtags like hashtag wrongful arrest, hashtag Darist, and hashtag racist cop were trending. Vanessa leaned against the squad car, arms crossed. Tell me, Officer Turner, how does it feel to be the most famous cop in the city? Jake's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had made a simple arrest. Why was the world turning against him? Miller turned to him, eyes dark. Turner, give me your badge. Jake's pulse spiked. Sir, now. Jake stood there motionless until Miller ripped it off his uniform himself. You're suspended, Miller said coldly. Jake felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. This is a mistake. No, Vanessa said. You made a mistake, and now you get to live with it. She stepped forward, standing close enough that Jake could feel the weight of her authority pressing down on him. You don't know me, Officer Turner, but you will, because I don't just let things like this go. She tapped her phone screen. And I have a meeting first thing tomorrow with the mayor, the police commissioner, and the entire city council. Guess what we'll be discussing? Jake's mouth went dry. Davis took a cautious step back, as if afraid to be associated with him. The realization hit Jake like a freight train. This wasn't just an overreaction. This was about to change everything. For him, for the police force, for the entire city. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. But as Vanessa prepares to take action, a shocking truth about Jake's past surfaces. Was this really just one wrongful arrest or part of something much bigger? The next morning, Vanessa Brooks sat at the long mahogany table inside City Hall. Across from her sat Mayor Rodriguez, Police Commissioner Langley, and Chief Miller. The room buzzed with tension, the weight of last night's events pressing down on them all. Vanessa set her phone on the table, playing the viral video. Jake's face filled the screen. His voice, firm but uncertain, rang through the room. You're under arrest. For what exactly? Miller exhaled sharply and rubbed his temple. It's bad, really bad. Rodriguez crossed his arms. Bad? A white officer wrongfully arrested the chief prosecutor based on nothing but race and vague suspicion. This isn't just bad. This is a PR disaster. Langley leaned forward. Vanessa, we need to get ahead of this. What do you want? Vanessa tilted her head, watching them squirm. I want an internal investigation, not just into Turner, but into the entire department. I want access to past complaints, body cam footage, and all cases involving racial profiling. Miller flinched. That's Vanessa, that's a big ask. She leaned forward. No, Chief. What's big is how many people in this city have suffered the same thing I did, but didn't have the power to fight back. The room fell silent. Rodriguez drummed his fingers on the table. If we don't do this, the public will demand Turner's head. They already are. This could lead to protests. Vanessa smirked. And if we do this, we actually fix something. Or are you afraid of what I'll find? Langley exchanged a look with Miller, then sighed. Fine. You'll get access. Miller clenched his jaw. But it stays internal. No leaks. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. I make no promises. The mayor sighed. Then we're done here. Vanessa stood, collecting her things. But just as she reached the door, Langley spoke again. There's something you should know about Turner. She turned back. What? Langley hesitated. He has a record. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. You mean complaints? Miller shifted. Several. Mostly from Black and Latino civilians. stops without cause, excessive force. But none ever stuck. No real consequences. Vanessa crossed her arms. And yet, he still wears a badge. Langley's voice dropped. Because someone kept covering for him. Vanessa felt a chill creep down her spine. Who? Miller hesitated. Then he pulled out a file and slid it across the table. Vanessa opened it, and her breath caught in her throat. A familiar name stared back at her. Detective Ryan Mathers. Her heart pounded. Mathers wasn't just any cop, he was one of the most powerful figures in the department. Respected, feared, and a man Vanessa had crossed paths with before. She clenched her fists. So Turner isn't just a rogue cop. He's protected. Langley nodded. Which means if you go after him, you might be going after something much bigger than you realize. Vanessa shut the file. Her jaw tightened. Good, she said. Then let's bring them all down. Who is Detective Ryan Mathers? And why has he been protecting Turner? What secrets is the department hiding? Vanessa sat in her office, staring at the name on the file. Detective Ryan Mathers. A man with too much power, too much influence. He had been a rising star in the force for years, but she had always felt something off about him. Now, she had proof he had been covering for Jake Turner. She exhaled, her fingers tightening around the folder. This was no longer about just one wrongful arrest. This was about a system built to protect its worst members. Her phone buzzed. It was Davis, the younger officer who had hesitated during her arrest. Turner's losing it, Davis said. His voice was tense. He just called me. He's paranoid. Thinks someone's setting him up. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Setting him up? He arrested the wrong person on camera. Davis hesitated. Yeah, but he swears he was following orders. Vanessa sat up straight. Whose orders? A pause. Then, Mathers. Her blood ran cold. Meet me in 30 minutes, she said. 30 minutes later, Davis sat across from her in a quiet cafe. He was nervous, glancing over his shoulder like someone was watching him. Vanessa leaned forward. Tell me everything. Davis sighed. Look, I've been on the force for 3 years. Turner's not a good cop, but he's not smart enough to be dangerous on his own. He follows orders. And every time he got in trouble, Mathers made it go away. Vanessa nodded. I know that much. But why? Davis glanced around again before lowering his voice. Because Mathers needs guys like Turner. Vanessa frowned. Explain. Davis took a deep breath. Mathers controls everything behind the scenes. He handpicks guys he can manipulate. Turner's reckless, sure. But he's useful, he does the dirty work. Stops people Mathers doesn't like. Looks the other way when Mathers needs him to. Vanessa's stomach tightened. And what exactly does Mathers need people to look away from? Davis hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. Vanessa glanced down. It was an email attachment. A police report. She opened it, scanning the text. Then she stopped, her eyes widening. It was a complaint filed against Mathers himself. Excessive force. Intimidation. A pattern of silencing witnesses in key investigations. And then she saw the name of the complainant. Her breath caught. The same woman Turner was supposed to arrest. Vanessa looked up. The real suspect she wasn't. A suspect at all was she. Davis shook his head. No. She was a whistleblower. Vanessa felt a chill. Mathers had orchestrated an arrest to silence someone. And when Turner grabbed the wrong woman, it had all spiraled out of control. She exhaled slowly. This wasn't just corruption. This was a cover-up. Davis leaned forward. You're not safe, Brooks. If you dig into this, Mathers will come after you. Vanessa smirked. Then I'd better dig fast. Now that Vanessa knows the truth, how far will Mathers go to stop her? Vanessa left the cafe with her mind racing. The truth had been staring her in the face all along. Her arrest hadn't been an accident. It had been a distraction. Someone had wanted the real woman silenced. And now that Vanessa knew, she was next. She slid into her car, gripping the steering wheel as she replayed the conversation with Davis. Mathers had been using officers like Turner to do his dirty work. And Turner, too blinded by his own arrogance, had walked right into Vanessa instead of the intended target. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." Vanessa exhaled through her nose. Cowards. She didn't scare easily. She locked her car doors and drove straight to her office, dialing Commissioner Langley on the way. "We need to talk," she said the moment he picked up. Langley sighed. "Vanessa, I have proof Mathers orchestrated an illegal arrest. And I'm guessing this isn't the first time." A long silence. Then, "Meet me in an hour." She hung up, gripping the wheel tighter. "This ends tonight." An hour later, Vanessa walked into Langley's office. The commissioner stood by the window looking out over the city. His expression was unreadable. "Tell me everything," he said without turning around. She placed the report Davis had given her on his desk. This woman, she filed a complaint against Mathers. The next day, a warrant went out for her arrest. That wasn't a coincidence. Langley finally looked at her, his face grim. "You realize what you're accusing him of?" Vanessa didn't blink. "Yes. And I know you've suspected it for a while." Langley ran a hand over his face. "Mathers has connections. He's protected. If we take him down, we have to do it right." Vanessa smirked. "Then let's do it right." Langley exhaled. "I'll start an internal probe. But, Vanessa, watch your back. If Mathers knows you're after him, I already have a target on my back," she said. "Might as well make it count." That night, as Vanessa walked to her car, she felt the hairs on her neck rise. A gut feeling someone was watching her. She stopped, pretending to check her phone, and caught a glimpse of movement in the reflection of a car window. A dark figure standing by a lamppost. Not moving, just watching. Vanessa's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She climbed into her car, locked the doors, and started the engine. The figure didn't move, but she could feel the weight of their gaze. A warning. She pulled out of the lot, her mind racing. This was bigger than she thought. And Mathers knew she was coming for him. The game had just begun. Who is watching Vanessa? And how far will Mathers go to keep his secrets buried? Vanessa kept one hand on the wheel and the other hovering near her phone as she drove through the dimly lit streets. The feeling of being watched hadn't left her. If anything, it had grown stronger. She checked her rearview mirror. A black sedan was 3 cars behind her. It had been there since she left the parking lot. Coincidence? She doubted it. Her pulse quickened. Was Mathers making his move already? She took a sharp right turn onto a less busy street. The sedan followed. Vanessa exhaled, steadying herself. She had expected retaliation, but she didn't think it would come this fast. She couldn't go home. If they knew where she worked, they knew where she lived. Instead, she took another quick turn, this time onto a street with heavy traffic. The sedan hesitated, then turned the opposite way. Vanessa's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her mind was still racing. They were testing her, letting her know she was being watched. She gripped the wheel tighter. Good. Let them watch. They'd see she wasn't backing down. 20 minutes later, Vanessa arrived at a small, private law office, the one place she knew she'd be safe to talk. She parked. In the back, taking the rear entrance. Inside, an older man with graying hair looked up from his desk. "Vanessa," he said, standing. "I saw the news. What the hell is going on?" She dropped into the chair across from him. "Mathers." The man, David Klein, a former federal prosecutor, sighed and sat back down. "I always knew he was dirty, but this? Covering up false arrests. Targeting whistleblowers." He shook his head. "That's next level." Vanessa pulled out the report Davis had given her. "This is just the tip of the iceberg. If we dig deeper, we'll find more." Klein frowned. "You're not the first person to try to bring Mathers down. but no one ever gets far. Because he silences them, Vanessa said. Klein nodded. Exactly. And now he's watching you, which means he's deciding what to do next. Vanessa leaned forward. Then we make the first move. Klein gave her a long look. You realize what you're getting into? Vanessa smirked. I was arrested on camera for a crime I didn't commit. I don't scare easy. Klein exhaled. Then let's do this right. We build an airtight case. We pull records, get statements. If Mathers has covered things up before, there's a paper trail somewhere. Vanessa nodded. And while we dig, I need you to protect a witness. Klein raised an eyebrow. The real suspect in my case, the woman Turner was supposed to arrest. She's in danger. She tried to expose Mathers, and now she's disappeared. Klein's expression darkened. You think he got to her? I don't know, but I need to find out before it's too late. Klein tapped his fingers on the desk. I have some people who can help track her down. But, Vanessa, if Mathers realizes you're protecting her, he won't just watch you anymore. Vanessa stood. Let him come. I'm ready. But as she walked to the door, she felt a chill crawl up her spine. She wasn't sure she believed that. Can Vanessa find the missing woman before Mathers does? Or is she already too late? Vanessa sat in her car outside David Klein's office, gripping the steering wheel. The woman who had tried to expose Mathers was missing, and that meant one of two things: either she was in hiding, or she was already dead. Her phone buzzed. A message from Klein. I found something. Come back inside. Vanessa didn't hesitate. She stepped out of her car and hurried back into his office, locking the door behind her. Klein was hunched over his laptop, scrolling through documents. Her name is Monica Reyes, he said without looking up. She filed an official complaint against Mathers 3 weeks ago. 2 days later, she disappeared. Vanessa leaned over the desk. What was the complaint about? Klein turned the screen toward her. She claimed Mathers was covering up illegal activity within the forced bribery, extortion, even cases of fabricated evidence. Vanessa exhaled sharply. And the department did nothing? They opened an internal review, Klein said, air quoting the words. But before she could testify, she was suddenly wanted for a felony she didn't commit. Vanessa clenched her jaw. Mathers made sure she wouldn't talk. Klein nodded. And now no one's seen her since. Vanessa thought for a moment. She must have gone into hiding. If she knew what Mathers was capable of, she wouldn't have waited around to be arrested. Klein pulled up another window. I checked hospital records. No sign of her. No missing persons report either. He paused. But I did find this. He turned the screen again. It was a security camera image from a bus station, grainy, low quality. But there was no mistaking the woman in the frame. Vanessa's eyes widened. That's her. Yeah, Klein said. And this was taken yesterday. Vanessa felt her pulse quicken. She's still in the city. Klein nodded. But she's on the run. And if we found this, so can Mathers. Vanessa grabbed her phone. Then we need to get to her first. An hour later, Vanessa pulled up outside a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. She had traced Monica's last known movements here. She stepped out of her car and adjusted her coat. The motel was the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. She approached the front desk, flashing her badge. I'm looking for a guest. Monica Reyes. Checked in within the last 2 days. The receptionist, a tired-looking man in his 50s, eyed her suspiciously. We don't give out guest info. Vanessa pulled a $100 bill from her pocket and slid it across the counter. Then consider this a courtesy tip. The man sighed, then grabbed the money and checked his logbook. Room 207, far end of the hall. Vanessa nodded her thanks and hurried toward the stairs. She reached room 207 and knocked lightly. Monica? It's Vanessa Brooks. I need to talk. Silence. Vanessa knocked again. I know what happened. I know about Mathers. I'm here to help. A faint sound from inside, a shuffle, hesitant footsteps. Then the door cracked open. A woman peeked out, eyes filled with fear. "How do I know I can trust you?" Vanessa lowered her voice. "Because if I wanted you gone, you'd already be in cuffs or worse." A pause. Then Monica slowly opened the door. Vanessa stepped inside. The room was a mess: half-packed bags, food wrappers, a cheap burner phone on the nightstand. Monica crossed her arms. "I shouldn't have come back here. They're looking for me, aren't they?" Vanessa nodded. "Yes. And you need to come with me before they find you first." Monica hesitated, glancing toward the window. "And what happens if I go with you?" "You testify. We expose Mathers and bring him down for good." Monica swallowed hard. "And if I don't?" Vanessa met her gaze. "Then you disappear. Forever." A long silence. Then Monica grabbed her bag. "Let's go." But just as they reached the door, a car screeched to a stop outside. Vanessa's stomach dropped. They had been followed. Can Vanessa and Monica get out before Mather's men close in? Or is it already too late? Vanessa's instincts kicked in the moment she heard the tires screech outside. They had been followed. She grabbed Monica's arm and pulled her away from the door. "Stay low." Monica's breath hitched. Oh God, focus," Vanessa whispered. She peeked through the grimy motel window. A black SUV had parked just outside, its headlights cutting through the darkness. The doors swung open. Two men stepped out, dressed in dark clothes, no badges, but Vanessa didn't need to see them to know they were here for Monica. Vanessa turned to her. "Do you have another way out?" Monica nodded frantically and pointed to the small bathroom window. "It leads to the back alley." Vanessa checked the lock on the door. It wouldn't hold for long. "Go. Now." Monica hesitated, fear etched on her face. "What about you?" Vanessa pulled out her phone and texted Klein. "They found us. Get backup. Now." Then she turned to Monica. "I'll be right behind you." Monica climbed onto the sink and started squeezing through the tiny window. Vanessa held her breath, listening. Heavy footsteps approached the door. A sharp knock followed. A voice, calm but menacing. "Miss Reyes, open the door." Monica halfway through the window. The door handle rattled. Vanessa whispered urgently, "Hurry." Then bang. The door splintered as a boot crashed through it. Vanessa turned just as the first man pushed inside, a gun raised. No time to think. She grabbed the motel lamp from the nightstand and smashed it into his face. The man staggered back, cursing. The second guy lunged toward her. Vanessa ducked, driving her elbow into his ribs. He grunted, but grabbed her arm, twisting it hard. Vanessa gritted her teeth and kicked his knee out. He dropped with a pained shout. The first man recovered fast. He swung wildly. Vanessa barely dodged, but the force sent her stumbling backward. Then she heard it, footsteps running. Monica was free. She had made it outside. Vanessa's job was done. Time to run. She spun toward the bathroom, but the first man grabbed her wrist, yanking her back. "Not so fast," he growled. Vanessa's heart pounded. Then police sirens. The men froze. Vanessa used the distraction, twisting her wrist free and slamming her knee into his stomach. He gasped, doubling over. She didn't wait. She bolted for the window, barely squeezing through before they could grab her. Outside, Monica was already running down the alley. Vanessa landed hard on the pavement and took off after her. Behind them, the motel room door burst open. The men rushed out. A gunshot rang out. Vanessa and Monica ducked behind a dumpster. Tires screeched as more cars pulled up, but not SUVs. Police cruisers. Backup had arrived. Vanessa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The two men cursed and ran, disappearing into the night. Seconds later, Klein's voice rang out. "Vanessa?" She stood, pulling Monica up with her. "We're here." Klein rushed over, his eyes scanning them for injuries. Jesus, are you okay? Vanessa nodded. We need to move. Now. Klein looked past her toward the motel. Who were they? Vanessa's jaw tightened. Mather's men. Klein exhaled sharply. Then this just got a lot worse. Vanessa turned to Monica, gripping her shoulders. You still with me? Monica was shaking, but she nodded. Yeah. Good, Vanessa said. Because this isn't over yet. With Mather's men getting bolder, can Vanessa expose the truth before it's too late? Vanessa sat in the back of Klein's car, pressing an ice pack against her bruised wrist. Monica sat beside her, arms wrapped around herself, still trembling from their close call. Klein drove in silence, his jaw tight. We can't go back to your office, he finally said. Mathers will have people watching. Vanessa nodded, wincing at the pain in her arm. Then we go somewhere they won't expect. Klein raised an eyebrow in the rearview mirror. Which is? Vanessa exhaled. The district attorney's office. Klein nearly swerved. You want to walk right into a building crawling with cops? Half of them probably answer to Mathers. Exactly, Vanessa said. They won't think I'm reckless enough to do it. But that's where I have the most resources. And the safest way to move forward is in plain sight. Monica looked at her, eyes wide. You think we'll be safe there? Vanessa met her gaze. We'll be safer than anywhere else. Klein grumbled under his breath, but didn't argue. He turned the car toward downtown. Vanessa reached for her phone and pulled up the files Davis had sent earlier. She needed hard proof, something that would destroy Mathers in one move. And then, she found it. Her breath caught. A sealed case file from 2 years ago. A name that made her blood run cold. Ryan Mathers, Internal Affairs Investigation Classified. She scrolled through quickly, her heart pounding. Complaints of excessive force. Allegations of planting evidence. Witnesses who had mysteriously recanted their statements. And then a financial report. Vanessa's stomach twisted. Bank deposits. Large ones. She clicked on the details. The money had come from an unknown private entity. Mathers wasn't just a dirty cop. He was on someone's payroll. She swallowed hard. If she could trace where the money came from, she could end this. But it also meant Mathers wasn't working alone. Her pulse spiked. Just how deep did this corruption run? 30 minutes later, Klein pulled into the underground parking garage beneath the DA's office. The moment they stepped out of the car, Vanessa grabbed Monica's arm. You're not going inside, she said firmly. Monica's eyes widened. What? But you're the only witness they actually want dead, Vanessa said. If you disappear, they have nothing to worry about. You're staying with Klein. Klein nodded. I have a safe house outside the city. No one knows about it. Monica hesitated. What if they find me? They won't, Vanessa said. And if they do, we'll be ready for them. Monica swallowed hard, then nodded. Vanessa turned to Klein. Take care of her. I need to finish this. Klein sighed. You sure you want to go in alone? Vanessa smirked. I'm never alone. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Davis picked up after the first ring. Brooks. I need a favor, she said. Davis hesitated. Mathers is already looking for you. I know, Vanessa said, but I have something he doesn't. Proof. A long pause. Then Davis sighed. What do you need? Vanessa stepped toward the elevator, her heart pounding. If I don't come out in an hour, she said, bring backup. The doors slid shut behind her. It was time to end this. Will Vanessa expose Mathers before he takes her out first? Or is she walking into a trap? Vanessa stepped off the elevator and into the dimly lit halls of the district attorney's office. The building was nearly empty this late at night, the usual hum of activity replaced by an eerie silence. She gripped her phone tightly, knowing that if she had miscalculated, she was walking straight into a trap. She took a steadying breath and moved toward her office. Her plan was simple: send the incriminating files to the press, the mayor, and the FBI before Mathers could stop her. But simple didn't mean safe. As she reached her office door, she froze. The door was already open. Vanessa's pulse spiked. She had locked it before leaving earlier. Someone was inside. She pushed the door open slowly. Sitting behind her desk, perfectly at ease, was Detective Ryan Mathers. He looked up, smiling like they were old friends. "Vanessa, I was wondering when you'd show up." Vanessa didn't move. "You must be desperate if you're breaking into my office." Mathers chuckled, leaning back in her chair. "Desperate? No, just tying up loose ends." Her fingers hovered over her phone screen, ready to send the files. "That's funny. I was about to do the same thing." Mathers' smile faded. His gaze flicked to her phone. "You think you're clever, don't you?" "I think I have evidence that will put you away for a long time," Vanessa shot back. Mathers exhaled, shaking his head. "See? That's where you made a mistake. You think the system will protect you. But the system? It belongs to people like me." Vanessa's grip tightened. "Not anymore." She tapped her phone screen. A confirmation message appeared. Mathers' eyes darkened. "What did you just do?" Vanessa smirked. "I just sent everything. Your financial records, the fabricated evidence, the witness reports, all of it. To the press, the mayor, the FBI." And she paused for effect. "Internal affairs." Mathers' jaw clenched. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted. The panic was real now. "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice wavered. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Check your phone, Ryan. See how long you have before your system turns on you." Mathers checked his messages. Whatever he saw made his face go pale. Vanessa smirked. "I'd say you have about 5 minutes before every news station in the city is knocking on your door." Mathers shot to his feet, fury burning in his eyes. "You just signed your death warrant, Brooks." Vanessa didn't flinch. "No, Ryan. You signed yours the moment you thought you could get away with this." A sharp knock at the door. Both of them turned. A voice from the hallway. "Detective Mathers. Step out with your hands where we can see them." Mathers' face twisted in rage. He yanked open the door and walked straight into Chief Miller and 3 internal affairs officers. Miller's eyes were cold. "Detective, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to commit felony misconduct." Mathers glared at Vanessa, breathing heavily. "This isn't over." Vanessa tilted her head. "Oh, I think it is." Mathers started to lunge toward her, but the officers grabbed him first. As they dragged him out, Vanessa exhaled, tension bleeding from her muscles. It was over. She had won. A week later, Vanessa sat across from Monica Reyes in a quiet cafe. Monica looked healthier now, relieved. "So what happens next?" Vanessa sipped her coffee. "Mathers is done. His connections are cutting ties to save themselves. Turner's suspended indefinitely. And the mayor? He's pushing for full reform." Monica smiled. "Because of you." Vanessa shook her head. "Because of the truth. I just made sure it saw the light." Monica took a deep breath. "Thank you." Vanessa smiled. "Just promise me one thing." Monica tilted her head. "What?" Vanessa leaned in. "If you ever see another cop like Mathers, speak up." Monica nodded, eyes filled with determination. "I will." Outside, the city moved on. But for Vanessa Brooks, this was just the beginning. Because corruption never sleeps. And neither did she. Justice was served this time, but how many more cases like this go unseen? How many more people suffer in silence? If you believe in truth, accountability, and standing up against corruption, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.